Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Thanks for having me.
This time, we're going back to World War II.
World War II.
Yeah.
Lots to talk about.
So much to cover there, but we're focusing specifically on the London Blitz. Now, you've probably heard about it, right?
Oh.
Air raids, blackouts.
The big one.
The iconic,
keep calm and carry on.
Keep calm and carry on spirit. But we're going deeper.
Okay.
We're using firsthand accounts. We're using historical research
to
really uncover the lived experience of Londoners during this time.
It's fascinating because I think a lot of us picture the Blitz as this unified city, everybody kind of bravely facing a common enemy.
Right.
But what we're going to uncover is it's actually a lot more complex and fascinating. Like each borough, each neighborhood, even each street faced unique challenges.
So it wasn't this one-size-fits-all experience.
Yeah. No, not at all. You might even be surprised to learn that like geography, local leadership, even social tensions really played a huge role in how the Blitz actually unfolded in different parts of London.
So can you give us a specific example? Like how did it actually play out differently?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So think about Bermondsey.
Okay.
It was a working class borough, heavily reliant on its docks and factories.
Makes sense.
And because of that, it became a prime target for German bombers.
Right, they would go after the industry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And residents there often had to seek shelter in some pretty vulnerable railway arches.
Oh, wow.
And tragically, some of those shelters proved inadequate when they were hit.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Were there any boroughs that maybe weren't hit as hard?
Yeah, so places like Finsbury, a densely populated inner London borough, had a totally different experience.
Okay.
They actually clashed with the government over deep shelter plans.
Really?
They really opted for more localized solutions.
Interesting.
And they even repurposed a disused tube tunnel into a shelter.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really thinking outside the box.
Talk about resourcefulness.
Right. Did any other boroughs show that kind of ingenuity?
Well, Kensington, a more affluent area, stands out for a different reason.
Okay.
They saw a huge influx of refugees from other boroughs.
Oh, wow.
Which created its own set of challenges.
Yeah, for sure.
But it also kind of spurred this this remarkable community effort.
Oh, okay.
Like a highly successful feeding program.
Wow. So even in the middle of all this chaos and destruction, you see these little glimmers of hope and community spirit emerging.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It really highlights the diverse ways Londoners reacted to the Blitz.
That's really fascinating. But I'm curious, where did people actually go?
Right.
During the air raids, were there designated shelters or how did that work?
So the development of shelter options is a story in itself.
Okay.
Early on, there was a lot of reliance on those Anderson shelters.
Right.
Those corrugated steel structures you see in all the photographs.
I have seen those.
But as the bombing intensified, the government actually allowed the use of tube stations as shelters.
Yeah, wow.
Kind of controversially.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And that led to thousands of people crammed into a single station each night.
Oh, my goodness.
And later on, they introduced the Morrison shelter, which was an indoor shelter designed to offer some protection inside people's homes.
I can only imagine how challenging and frightening.
Oh, yeah.
It must have been to live in such close quarters with so many others, especially with the threat of attack looming overhead.
Right. And the diaries and accounts from this time really give us a sense of what that was like.
Wow.
Imagine the London Bridge Railway Arch shelter.
Okay.
Packed with people. Sanitation was a major concern.
Yeah.
Not exactly comfortable.
Not at all, no. Were all the shelters that difficult?
Not necessarily. So some accounts describe this surprising sense of community and even domesticity in certain shelters.
Okay.
Like in Kensington Tube Station, families actually tried to create a sense of normalcy. They brought furniture, games, even pets.
It's amazing how people find ways to adapt and cope, even in the most dire circumstances. But I have to ask about the psychological impact.
Right.
How did this constant threat of bombing affect the morale of Londoners?
Well, that's where this idea of Blitz spirit comes into play.
Yeah.
You know?
Keep calm and carry on.
We've all heard the stories of Londoners just bravely carrying on with their lives, amidst the chaos.
Yeah, did people, I mean, was it really like that? Did people actually maintain that positive outlook the entire time?
So while there was definitely resilience and community support, the sources also reveal a more nuanced picture.
Okay.
You have to consider the psychological toll of living under that constant threat, the fear of an attack, and the exhaustion of sleepless nights in shelters.
Right, so Blitz spirit wasn't necessarily like a universal experience.
Exactly. Like, the sources suggest a real range of responses to the Blitz. Some accounts describe panic in the shelters, resentment towards people who maybe weren't doing their part.
Wow.
And even instances of social breakdown.
That's really interesting.
So it wasn't all stiff upper lips and sing-alongs?
Right. It's fascinating how individual experiences could be so different.
Right.
Was that just personality, or were there other things going on?
Well, what's interesting is the sources actually point to the role of local authorities in kind of shaping those experiences.
Okay.
So, for instance, Finsbury's Shelter Council tried to control the narrative,
Interesting.
emphasizing community unity and downplaying any signs of dissent.
That's interesting.
Whereas Kensington, their public relations efforts focused more on showcasing their successful feeding program and community initiatives, highlighting a more positive, resilient image.
It sounds like local leadership played a really significant role in how the Blitz was experienced and remembered.
Yeah.
But beyond the shelters and morale, what about the actual practical challenges of daily life?
Right.
How do people cope with, their homes being destroyed and the disruption of just essential services?
Right. Well, that's where the differences between boroughs become even more apparent. Providing for the bombed-out residents was a huge undertaking, and resources weren't evenly distributed. So early on, there were these makeshift rest centers offering basic necessities, but the quality and efficiency of these varied significantly.
So even in a national crisis, local factors still heavily influenced people's lives.
Absolutely.
What about food? Was there enough to go around?
The challenge of feeding a city under siege.
Yeah.
This is where Kensington's communal feeding program really stands out. Driven by individuals like Flora Solomon and Mayor Jenkins, they created this network of kitchens that provided not just meals, but a sense of community and normalcy for those who had lost their homes.
Wow, that's incredible. It's amazing how, even in such dire situations, people find ways to support each other and to create a sense of normalcy.
Yeah.
But what about the other boroughs? Did they have similar types of programs?
Well, the sources suggest more of an uneven response. In other areas, for example, in Bermondsey and Finsbury, residents often had to rely on their own resourcefulness or whatever, limited support their local authorities could provide.
It's a reminder that even during national crises, resources and opportunities aren't always shared equally.
Right.
But we can't forget that the Blitz wasn't a static event.
Right.
It evolved over time.
Exactly. Wow. Just as Londoners were kind of adapting to the nightly bombing raids, the nature of the threat itself changed. So the so-called Little Blitz in early 1944 brought renewed attacks. And then, on a whole other level of terror, came the introduction of the V1 flying bombs and V2 rockets.
These new weapons, they must have created just a whole other set of challenges for Londoners.
Absolutely.
How do they differ from, like, the earlier bombings?
Well, the V weapons brought this new kind of
psychological strain. So the V1s, with that distinctive engine sound, created this constant dread as people waited to hear if the engine would cut out.
Oh, my God.
Almost like a terrifying game of chance.
Wow.
And then the V2s, being supersonic, arrived without warning.
Oh, wow.
Made traditional air raid sirens useless.
So there was no time to even seek shelter.
No way to anticipate the next strike.
That must have been just so unnerving to live with that constant vulnerability.
Absolutely.
How did people even cope with this new threat?
It's fascinating because the sources suggest a shift in coping mechanisms. So with the earlier bombing raids,
Yeah.
there was this sense of control
Okay.
in seeking shelter,
Right.
in following the routines. But with the V weapons, that sense of control vanished.
Wow.
It became more about individual resilience,
Right.
finding ways to manage that constant fear. The uncertainty.
And uncertainties.
I can only imagine the toll that must have taken on people.
Yeah.
What kinds of stories do the sources tell about life under the V weapons?
There are some truly harrowing accounts.
Yeah.
One describes the impact of a V1 strike in East Ham. Real blow for residents who thought the worst was over.
Right.
Diarists in Croydon and Kensington recount near-miss experiences.
Oh, wow.
Capturing that sense of living on edge.
Right.
And then there's the horrific aftermath of the V2 strike on the Deptford Woolworths store.
Oh, yeah.
A tragedy that claimed hundreds of lives.
It's hard to even comprehend the scale of the devastation and the resilience it must have taken to keep going in the face of such relentless attacks.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it seems like the Blitz, despite all of its challenges, also brought out this spirit of innovation and resourcefulness.
Okay, in what way?
One example that stands out is the development of new technologies and strategies to counter the V weapons. Scientists worked tirelessly to improve radar detection systems.
Wow.
Fighter pilots risked their lives to intercept the flying bombs.
Wow.
And on the ground, communities organized fire-watching patrols and developed early warning systems.
That's incredible.
Trying to give people those precious seconds of notice before a V1 strike.
It's remarkable how people on an individual and collective level found ways to fight back and adapt to these really unprecedented challenges.
Yeah.
But even with all those efforts, the Blitz must have left a lasting impact on London and its residents.
For sure.
What do the sources tell us about the long-term consequences of this period?
That's a really important question, and it's something historians continue to explore.
Okay.
Beyond the physical destruction.
Right.
The Blitz really had this profound impact on the social fabric of London.
Yeah.
You know, it forced people to confront their own mortality, question their assumptions about safety and security.
Yeah.
It also highlighted the inequalities within society.
Right.
As some communities were just better equipped to cope with the devastation than others.
So it seems like the Blitz, while it was a period of immense hardship, also maybe became a catalyst for social change.
That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
The Blitz definitely spurred this reevaluation of social priorities. So, for instance, the inadequacies of existing housing and shelter provisions became glaringly apparent.
Wow.
And that led to this renewed focus on social welfare and urban planning.
Interesting.
In the post-war years.
It's amazing how such a devastating event could also lead to positive social transformations.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, how did these experiences kind of shape the collective memory of the Blitz? Is the popular narrative of Blitz spirit an accurate reflection of what Londoners actually went through?
That's a complex question, and one that historians continue to debate. You know, on one hand, the Blitz spirit narrative captures this undeniable resilience and courage.
Right.
But as we've seen, it's important to acknowledge the full spectrum of experiences.
Right.
The fear, the hardship,
Yeah.
the social tensions that existed alongside the acts of bravery and community support.
It seems like the real story of the Blitz is much more nuanced than any single narrative can capture.
Yeah.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what's the key takeaway you would leave our listener with?
I think it's the importance of understanding history from multiple perspectives. You know, the Blitz wasn't just one event, but a tapestry of individual and collective experiences shaped by factors like geography, social class, and the actions of both individuals and institutions.
So by digging into those local details, exploring the personal stories, alongside the grand narratives, we get a much richer and more meaningful understanding of this pivotal moment in history.
I completely agree.
We see the complexity of human responses to adversity, the resilience of the human spirit, and the power of community in the face of just unimaginable challenges.
Totally.
It's a reminder that history is not just a collection of facts and dates, but a living, breathing story of human experiences that continue to shape our world today.
Absolutely.
And with that, we conclude our deep dive into the London Blitz.
Thank you. Makes you think about how we even remember these events.
It really does.
No, the Blitz has become this powerful symbol of British resilience.
Right.
But is that simplified narrative really doing justice to the nuance?
Yeah, to the nuance of
like what people really went through.
Of what Londoners went through. It's so interesting to me how much the sources really emphasize that local context, the idea that it wasn't just one experience, but a collection of individual stories.
It's in those individual stories that we find a more nuanced and frankly more human understanding of the Blitz.
Right.
We see the fear, the despair, alongside the courage, the kindness.
Alongside those acts of bravery.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And we also see how pre-existing social divisions were sometimes made worse by the pressures of wartime.
Of course.
But also how communities came together to support one another in these remarkable ways.
It seems like the Blitz forced people to confront not just the threat of the bombing itself, but also, like you said, the internal struggles of a society facing immense pressure.
Absolutely.
Do you think that they emerged from this experience fundamentally different?
It's a question that historians still grapple with.
Right.
Some argue that the Blitz created this sense of unity and social leveling, that it broke down class barriers in the shelters and the communal kitchens, while others point to, the persistence of social tensions, even instances of scapegoating, as evidence that the Blitz actually just magnified existing divisions.
So it's not really a simple answer.
Not at all.
It seems like it had this really multifaceted impact.
Right.
Both bringing people together and exposing those fault lines.
Absolutely.
So from all of the sources that we've explored, what would you say is the most important thing for our listener to remember about the London Blitz?
I think it's the power of perspective.
Okay.
The Blitz wasn't just a single event, but this kaleidoscope of experiences shaped by geography, by social class, individual choices, the actions of institutions.
And by looking beyond just those headlines, by delving into those local details.
That's personal stories.
And those personal stories, we gain a much richer and more accurate understanding of this time.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that even amidst chaos and destruction, human resilience, the power of community can really shine through.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also that history is rarely black and white.
Right. It's filled
with
shades of gray, with those individual stories that challenge.
That challenge those simple.
Those generalizations.
Yeah. Well, it's been incredible exploring the London Blitz with you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for sharing your insights.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And to our listener, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into history.
Yes. Thank you.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the complexities of our world.